Welcome back to Wisdom Rising, your official podcast of Moon Rising Shamanic Institute, where we talk all things about shamanism, mysticism, energy healing, personal development, and so much more. So glad to have you with us today. Please note that we've got a few announcements before we dive into today's topic on channeling. And I just got back from Steamboat Springs, and I wanted to let you know that we have got numerous other in-person locations coming up. So if you're in this area, if you know people in these areas, please send them our way because I would love to meet y'all in person. I've got Bozeman, Montana coming up for Friday, December 20th for a solstice event. And then we have December 28th, I'll be in Phoenix. December 29th, I'll be in Tucson, Arizona. And then I'm heading over with Isabel to Houston from January 2nd through the 5th, I believe. And we've got a whole big lineup for Houston. Super excited. Better get those tickets in now because they're already filling up. If you are wanting to fly in or join us while we're in Houston, make sure you get those tickets. Really excited about all of our upcoming workshops, giving you kind of a taste of what our Soul Rising program is all about, which launches for open enrollment soon. And we are going to be kicking that off our next 4-month program here in January. So super excited about all of the places and spaces and students we get to support. It's going to be amazing. But for today, we are doing something a little different. I'm really excited about this conversation because, over the years, I really feel like we have done a lot of different podcasts and conversations on how to really move through that victimhood mindset, or how to connect with your spirit team, or all of these different topics that really we're passionate about. But at the end of the day, I kind of step back sometimes. I'm like, but do people know what I actually do? do people know what Christine Renee is actually about? Because you don't really get to my topics until we get to the advanced training. So we have Isabel and Chantel, who are amazing teachers, helping me out so much in the Soul Rising program and as well as the practitioner program. But you don't really get the full on flavor of what Christine Renee's capacity to teach and how I serve until we get to the advanced. And we don't really often talk about those topics. And so today we're going to be talking about channeling. And I'm really excited by this because there's a lot of different angles you can look at channeling, which isn't really presented in the common spiritual spaces. And that's what I want to get into. I really want to get into, what does it mean? What does it look like? And how do we do it here over at Moon Rising Shamanic Institute? Because believe it or not, each and every one of us on the team here can channel, and we do on a regular basis, and would love to open that world to you as well. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. And let's get going. Isabel, how do we want to start today?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, of course, as always, I would love to start with a little welcome to another amazing episode of our Whispers of Wisdom conversations today. Christina and I are diving into all things channeling, like Christine was saying. This is really our chance to explore, what does channeling look like? And when we say channeling, what do we mean, right? This is something that so many members of the spiritual community talk about channeling as this like really profound, really powerful practice that everybody wants to do, but only a select few are quote unquote chosen for, right? That's kind of the air that channeling has. It's this way of connecting with spirit that only a few people get to do, and we all kind of sit back in awe as we watch them. But here at Moon Rising Shamanic Institute, we take a little bit of a different spin and a little bit of a different perspective on what channeling really is and how we can connect to spirit in a really tangible way. And I love bringing this conversation forward because each and every one of us on the Moon Rising team, myself, Christine, Chantel, we all channel, but we all channel in different ways. And so as we have this conversation and as we're bringing through this topic, it's something that we haven't touched on the podcast before. And at the same time, I think it's a really exciting place to be, because my hope is that by the end of this conversation, a lot of people listening will realize that you've actually been channeling without realizing it. And I think this is where this is a great place to start this conversation, is really looking at, when we say channeling, what do we mean? I think a lot of people hear channeling and they think of, for example, Abraham Hicks, somebody who goes into a trance like Esther Hicks. This energy or entity comes through her, uses her mouth like a radio, and transmit these messages directly from spirit. And that's kind of what we think of when we think channeling, is this person whose being is just kind of taken over and something comes through, whether that's in English or it's in light language or it's something, right? But for me, I think the best place to really start this conversation so that we can all be on the same page is really looking at channeling as a way of communing with spirit, so that that energy and inspiration comes through you and out into the world. It's this way of channeling, quote unquote, divine energy through yourself out into the world. And what I love about looking at channeling from this lens is it takes away a lot of the boxes that we think of when we think, oh, this person's a channeler, right? It means that, yeah, of course, Esther Hicks is a channeler, but it also means that the painter who created a masterpiece was channeling. It means that the poet whose channeling comes through in written word instead of spoken word, they can be channeling. That a Reiki practitioner, when they are really in the flow and really connected with the divine, that can be channeling. And I love this because it takes the focus away from this one spiritual gift, i.e., the ability to pull in words from the divine and have them come out of your own mouth. And it opens it up to, what is your spiritual gift? And how can you use that to connect with spirit and allow things to flow through you? And so when we take it from this lens, it opens up this whole perspective of channeling, where we may also need to give a little background on the spiritual gifts themselves and how those can roll through. So I'll pass that to you, Christine.
Oh, goody. Thanks so much, Isabel. That's a great way to kick off the conversation. And I love that this is an understanding that by channeling spirit, it's going to come out in whatever ways you are in alignment with. And so it's awesome if it comes out in words or light language, but it might come out in art. It might come out in autonomic writing. It might come out in your body movement. Like, there's so many ways to tune into divine and channel that energy forward. And so what does that look like for you? And how can we find our own personalized practice to come into that flow? How do we come into alignment with our spiritual gifts? And what do those look like? So, real quick overview of the spiritual gifts. Think about your five senses and how do they reflect spiritually. So, do we hear? Do we see? Do we feel? Do we touch? Do we taste? Do we smell? Those senses can have a spiritual reflection, and that is the way that the divine can communicate with you, right? And so this is when the chef has a divine inspiration hit of putting these two flavors together. That can be, in a way, channeling in this person. And so and it all comes back to, are you in the flow? And I think that's oftentimes what we're encouraging here, is to find your own personal practice, your own activating actions, your own self-care routine, so that you can find your flow every single day. So, like, for example, I woke up this morning with my head was a little sore. Like, I felt like I was grinding my teeth, and I don't do that very often. I have to be pretty stressed out to be grinding my teeth. And I'm not really sure exactly what I'm stressed out about, but knowing that I woke up grinding my teeth, it just put this heaviness on me when I woke up this morning. And I'm like, okay, I can get up, I can get the kids breakfast, I can make their lunches, I can do the things. And I'm just dragging. I'm like forcing myself to go through the process. And I have to stop myself and go, what's going to help me come back into alignment? What's going to help take the stress out of my physical body, out of my emotional health, and release it so I can come into my own flow? And when we can have first, the awareness, I'm off kilter. I need to do something to come back into flow. That's always step number one. And in years past, if you would have asked me 10 years ago, I would have just continued being stressed out. Like, I would have not had the tools and the techniques and the routine down to go, what's going to help me come into flow? I would have just been a hot mess and projected my hot mess onto everyone else. and hope for sympathy for them to help me. Like that was my way of coping in the past. And today I go, okay, I'm going to put something easy together for lunches and I'm going to go sit down. I'm going to do my yoni yoga. I'm going to come into flow. I'm going to do some anger release exercises because I feel like this could be an attachment of energy from someone else. I want to clear that out. And literally it took 15 minutes before getting on this call. That's what I was doing, right? I needed to really understand my energetic container and going, where in my body am I feeling this and how can I release it? What's going to be best for me? And then this is one of my favorite things to teach in Soul Rising, our 4-month program, is that, we just put together one of our final slideshows, Isabel and I did. And, the coolest thing about it was we have all of these activating actions for every single module. Every single month, you get these activating actions. This is your freaking buffet table of what is going to be your spiritual practice. And there was over 30 items on that list, 30 techniques. And I'm just like, this in and of itself, it could be a program, and it's just a fraction of what our program is, but it's here are all of these different techniques. What's going to work for you? Are we moving through sadness? Are we moving through anger? Are we moving through your ecstatic joy? Like, what are we moving through? And seeing emotion as energy in motion. And instead of going, let's stop it up, let's stagnate it, let's push it down, go, no, let it come to the surface. Let us process it. And as we move through our healing, we're bubbling these things to the surface all the freaking time. What is that has been suppressed that's ready to come to the surface to be healed? And once that healing has taken place, once you have a practice in it happening on a regular basis, on a regular routine, when you are off, perhaps I was having nightmares last night. That's what I'm assuming. Something has gotten into my psychology and, I'm off kilter and going, okay, off of this giant list, what's going to be the best for me to come back into balance? And when I can come into balance, knowing that I was coming on to this conversation, how can I come into such flow of my higher self in alignment with who I truly am as a divine individual who has the capacity for more expansion? What does that look like? And who wants to come help support me find that channel?
And this is something where everybody listening to this might be going, but we were supposed to be talking about channeling. What is this kind of self-care piece have to do with it? And this is where I really like to go back to this idea of know thyself, right? Because there are two ways we can think about this. And the first is the classic example that we hear when we're going through Reiki training of a straw. You want to be as clean a straw as you can so that Reiki can flow through you uninhibited. That's kind of the classic example that we hear. And that our self-Reiki practice or our self-care practice is our way of clearing out the straw. The other way of looking at this, to piggyback on something that Christine said, was this idea of emotions are energy in motion. We are living, breathing beings. We don't know what stagnant means, or we shouldn't know what stagnant means, meaning that our blood is always moving, our oxygen is always moving, our energy is always moving. If we look at, for example, the chakras, right? That's something that everybody's familiar with. Chakras mean wheel in Sanskrit. They were these moving energy centers. They weren't storage spaces like they're often portrayed. They were centers that energy passed through as our energy was moving and flowing through us. And a stagnant or still energetic being ceases to exist, essentially, because energy is always in motion. And so when we have emotions and we stuff them down, we're basically creating these stuck points in our energetic field. We're creating, however you want to see them, these crusts, these like hard places, this shell over our core energy. And when we're saying, our core energy or our true self or all of these things, we're talking about that space within you that is connected to the divine, that is the divine in you. And when we have these emotions or these experiences that we stuff down, or we're feeling off kilter, it is a sign that somewhere along the way we've come out of alignment with this core self. And the way that I love to explain this to our students is, imagine that you have, this is a really rudimentary example here, but imagine that you have these three parts of your being. You have your mind, right? The thinker, the one that wants to solve the problems. It's really good at identifying the problems. It thinks it can fix things, but really it's just good at identifying this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. We have our thinker. And then we have our soul, that place where we have our gut instincts, where we have our intuition, where we have that connection to the divine, that connection to all that is. And in between those, you have this spark of awareness, right? We hear this all the time. You are the observer, you are awareness. You can be aware of your mind and you can be aware of your soul. You aren't fully either of those things. You're this spark of awareness here in the middle that is that, great mystery of life. But the beauty of this is that if we have mind, then awareness, then soul, we kind of have this perfect lineup of the three parts of our beings. And I like to imagine that these three balls of consciousness, if you will, are connected by an energetic line. And in a flowing, aligned individual, like we're talking about, energy is able to flow from the mind through the awareness to the soul and back. We see this in the chakras. Energy should be able to flow from the crown to the root and back in this flowing system that we have. But when we are out of alignment, when those wires are disconnected, when one chakra is blocked and energy can't get to another chakra, however you want to look at this, when our energy is out of alignment, there's something disconnected. We have somewhere along the way disconnected from our true self, aka we have disconnected from spirit or disconnected from the divine. And it is impossible to channel in that state because our wire, our connection to the divine, to spirit, to that all that is truth has been lost. And so this step of being able to know thyself and notice where are those wires disconnected? Where is my energy not flowing? Where have I kind of created this energetic bubble so that I don't have to feel this emotion, which is actually causing this disconnect? Because when you have the ability to have that awareness and you couple that with actually using the tools and techniques that we've been taught, right? Whether you're a shamanic practitioner or a Reiki practitioner or a yogi or a meditator or whatever, you have been taught these amazing tools and techniques throughout your spiritual journey. But so often when it comes down to it, we forget to use them. We forget to actually put them in place because they seem so simple. They seem so easy. And we think, oh, well, I should have that down, right? Like I should be beyond that because I've been doing this for years. These are kind of the subconscious thoughts that we have. But until we figure out where is that wire disconnected and what do I need to do to plug back in, to get realigned with source, it's just another way of saying the same thing. What do I need to get back into the flow, to get back into connection with spirit? And then the ability to take the inspired action to do the thing, to not only know this is how I'm feeling and this is where I want to go, but what's going to help me bridge that gap so that on the other side, once you're connected and once you're aligned and once those wires are where they're meant to be, your entire being is open and ready to allow energy, to allow spirit, to allow the divine to flow through you. And that's when channeling can happen. But it's not until we're in that open and aligned state that we can do that. And that's why the ability to look at our emotions, that's why having a self-care practice, that's why doing our shadow work and healing our traumas and looking at our limiting beliefs, that's why all of these things are so important, is because yes, on the one hand, healing your limiting beliefs and practicing some self-care and taking time for yourself, it's going to help you to have a happier, easier life. But it's also going to allow you to reconnect with your truth and to reconnect with spirit in a really tangible way so that we can look at what does channeling in that space look like for you.
It's really interesting because as you were talking, the imagery that came to mind, here's me channeling right now, right? Is I was reminded of our cord cutting workshop that I often teach about how we unplug from people's energy that's trying to siphon energy off of ourselves. Like there's energy cords, good and bad. Like there's all kinds of energy cords. And we can get into that in another conversation. But one way to look at those is they're plugging into you, they're siphoning your energy in off of you. And what would it be like when you feel like you're out of flow to find your own plug, your own energetic cord that we're plugging in from your soul space into divine line? And so that if like you can just imagine closing your eyes, taking a nice deep breath and envisioning your crown chakra being open to this availability of this divine white light and envisioning a energetic cord going up to source and plugging into source and letting your own battery fill up in whatever way it needs to. Receiving, being open to receive in whatever way you need to receive. And knowing and trusting that the universe knows what you need. There's a divine intelligence there. This is one of the reasons why I love Reiki. It's that ray, that divine intelligence knows what you need. And are we available to say, yes, I'm open and ready to receive healing. I'm open and ready to come into flow with divine light. And when we're in that state of, I'm open and ready to receive that divine light, what does that look like for you? So for me, it might be this. I feel like I'm in alignment and I'm getting the visuals of how I can support our listeners. I'm getting oftentimes things will come out of my mouth, whether on the podcast or with my students. And I'm like, I don't know where that came from. Obviously, I'm just allowing spirit to speak through me and giving the inspiration that's needed for this audience. I don't know how many times I have freaked out students in class because I am literally speaking their story and I have no idea what their story is, but spirit does. And so the examples that come to me that are coming through divine, I'm speaking them out loud and the student in the class goes, that was my trauma. That was my story. How did you know that? And I'm like, I don't. Spirit wanted me to call upon this example. And so I let it. I followed that inspiration. And noticing that word inspiration, I was inspired. It fills you up and overflows from that space. And so what does that look like for you? How does your inspiration show up? And I feel like when we are inspired, this is coming from divine. We have to pay attention to our inspiration. We have to pay attention to our passions. We have to pay attention to our soul's desires because those are seeds planted from the divine. And when we can say yes to them and have a knowingness that they are divine, who am I to say that I'm not worthy of my desire? Because clearly it's coming from divine. And so when we come into that knowingness, that divine righteousness, like of course the divine loves me and has a plan for me, and there's divine intelligence to back up the highest plan for my life. And it's in accordance to my soul agreement. Like I agreed to it. So why am I fighting it? Like, why am I fighting it? It's just like Isabel said with the straw. It's like you're putting your own gravel down those straws. You're getting them dirty yourself when you self-doubt and you get in your own way. You trip yourself up. And what if it could just be available, that you are a clear conduit for whatever needs to come through, whatever needs to come out of your mouth, and you give your life in service of the divine. And when you can fully surrender into that, channeling happens on a regular basis. Yes, there are times when I am in a clear space where I can set aside the mind, the logic, and allow divine and my soul to interact in such a powerful way that things come out of my mouth, such as light language, which is what I'm assuming a lot of people are like when they stereotype channeling, that's what they're thinking. Or like the Esther Hicks channeling Abraham, that type of channeling. And that's a beautiful, beautiful gift if that is the way it comes to you. And sometimes it does for me and sometimes it doesn't. And it really depends on, is my mind checked out? Is my ego not available? And when I can come into that space, there's a couple of things that can happen. And this is what I wanted to describe to you. And I've mentioned it in a previous podcast on our starseed conversation, is that when I'm in alignment with who I am, the language that comes forth might be my galactic language that I am inherently connected to. It is my first language, right? And there is times when that light language that is coming through is coming from a higher source, a galactic source of another entity. And sometimes it's a goddess. Sometimes it depends on who I'm tuning into, and having the awareness of, is this just me and my language, or is this something else that's trying to communicate through me? And am I available for that? Right? We need to also be careful when we let the mind go? Are we in full alignment? Are we in a place of channeling the divine, or are we opening ourselves up to anything that wants to come through? Right? We need to be careful. This is why starting off our practice with intention, starting off our practice with smudging, with calling in the directions, with something to say, this is my energy and this is what I'm available for, and this is what I'm not available for. Because this is the same idea. Like, I can channel through a Ouija board, but I'm not doing that. Right? There's a collective consciousness and heaviness when it comes to a Ouija board. Is that channeling? Absolutely. What is coming through that Ouija board is the concern, right? And so this is where one of my favorite practices is deity yoga, right? I'm literally channeling the energy of a specific deity. And you can do this through mudra, mantra, mandala, right? And so you have hand positions, visualizations, chanting. You have all these different things you can do to practice deity yoga. Think about kirtan. Here we all are sitting in a group chanting to a specific deity. That is one aspect of deity yoga. You can bring it even further when you are allowing their power to embody you. When do we do this? How do we do this in a safe way? And making sure that you are not bringing in an entity that is not of the love and light.
And this is where, I love having this conversation, because we start to see in this spectrum of ways that we're channeling kind of the three main ways that we think of when we talk about channeling. To summarize everything that Christine just brought forward, so typically we see the three kinds of channeling that we think about are intuitive channeling, conscious channeling, and trance channeling. So trance channeling is probably what people are most familiar with, or what comes to mind first when we think of trance channeling, where the person is completely kind of taken over by spirit, by divine, by, like Christine was saying, a goddess, an energy, and their words are coming through you. Again, whether it's in English like Abraham Hicks, or it's light language, or you're channeling, the original planet languages of the star children, or things like this. And then we have conscious channeling. And conscious channeling is typically a step back from channeling, but still in the same vein. So conscious channeling is where we are opening up our energy. We're opening up, that straw channel to receive new information, to receive downloads, to receive words, to receive whatever it is from spirit, source, goddesses, gods, whatever it is. But we're aware while we're doing it. So whereas in trance channeling, the channeler will come out of it and not remember what they said or what they did, in conscious channeling, that person's awareness is still there. It's still in them. They're just allowing something to come through them. And this is often, I think, the most difficult or advanced form of channeling, because it requires you to be able to hold two energies at the same time. You have to hold your own awareness and be open enough to receive new intelligence, or to receive wisdom, or to receive messages, and be able to decipher, was this mine or was this new? And then we have intuitive channeling. And intuitive channeling is a form of channeling that I don't think gets enough credit, because I think it's the one that when we say, do you channel? If everybody knew that intuitive channeling was a form of channeling, they'd be like, oh yeah, of course, I'm a channeler. And intuitive channeling is where we're receiving downloads, where, like Christine was saying, we're just talking and suddenly a new idea pops into our head and we're letting it come through us. Or, where we're in the middle of writing a story or a poem or painting or what have you, and suddenly we're just in that flow. And something comes out of us that is more than what we could have done on our own, where we know that the hands of the divine have been at play here, right? And what I love about this, and especially having this conversation in the way that we're doing it, is I would love to take a moment to kind of sweep those three forms of channeling off the table, because what I find is that it starts to feel really limiting, where a lot of our students or my clients or members of the community will feel like they are cut off from spirit if their way of receiving messages or insight doesn't look a certain way. And then they start to feel less than. They feel like, what am I doing that I'm not receiving messages like so and so? I must not be as spiritually advanced as this person because they can channel in a different way. And we see this even in things like our students' shamanic journeying, where everybody's journey looks different because we all have different ways of utilizing our spiritual gifts and connecting with spirit. But we feel like, the people who see things like a movie, they must be better than I am because I quote unquote just hear things or I just feel things. And I would love to take this hierarchy of spiritual connection off the table and really invite you to step out of that box and realize that connecting to spirit is connecting to spirit, no matter how it happens. And just because you think that it should, quote unquote, look a certain way, doesn't mean that it's actually supposed to look that way. All of those shoulds about what a good spiritual connection looks like, they're completely made up. They're completely made up. We have just decided arbitrarily what it looks like to be a good spiritual practitioner. And I would love to bring us back to that original definition, that original intention that we set out, that channeling is when you are able to connect to spirit, stay in alignment, and allow something new to come through you, when you are taking divine energy and bringing it through into the world. And so this is where I love to kind of put in, here's a new way of looking at channeling. Here's a new way of looking at how we receive divine inspiration, like Christine was saying. And this is where I love to look at our sacral chakra and our third eye chakra. And I know those might seem like weird chakras to pull out when we're talking about channeling, but there's a reason for it. And I'm going to start with third eye because I think people will understand it more. We think about third eye chakra, right? And this is the chakra that people are the most familiar with, right? It's worked its way into mass consciousness. And we all know where our third eye chakra is. We know it's connected with our intuition. But what we don't realize is that third eye chakra is actually the first meeting place of the divine and the human. It is the point where the energy that comes through our crown chakra, which is just above our head, enters into our body and into our awareness. And it's the point where energy or divine inspiration mixes with our mind or our personality and creates something new. So this is where what starts off as an experience, as an energy in our crown chakra, comes down and is received into thought form, if you will, in our third eye. And so there's a way of channeling that is pulling that information from the divine into words, into spoken word, into written word, into thought form. That's one way. We'll come back to this. The other way of looking at it is sacral chakra. And sacral chakra we think of as, our sexuality, our fun and play, our inner child, all of these things. Sacral chakra is actually one of the most powerful manifesting chakras. If we think about this in women, we see this as, childbirth. We are creating a physical form out of nothing. If that's not manifestation, I don't know what is. But when we look at sacral chakra, what we're looking at is the energy of creation. And a lot of times we think creation, we think creativity, right? Like go color, go paint something, go write a poem, have fun. But what we forget is that the act of creating something, no matter what it is, whether it's a meal that you cooked, a poem that you wrote, a scarf that you knitted, whatever it is, you are taking an idea, an energy, and bringing it into reality in physical form. That is the definition of manifestation. But in order to take that new idea, in order to pull in this new energy, we have this co-creation with the divine, where we are receiving inspiration, we're receiving insight into this womb space, if you will, even if you're, a male or have prominently masculine energy, this womb space of incubation for the divine, if you will, where we are pulling in this inspiration and it comes out of us as an experience. So whereas our third eye intuition or our third eye ability to channel comes out mostly in words, again, whether that's English or light language or what have you, we're pulling in inspiration from the crown into our third eye, where it gets turned into thought form, aka words. Or we're pulling in inspiration into our sacral chakra and it's coming through us as an experience, as a creation, whether that's art or dance or a poem or a meal that you cooked or whatever it is coming out of you as a physical manifestation. Both of those are channeling. And what I love about looking at channeling this way, instead of saying, well, are you trance channeling or are you just getting downloads, or is it takes the worthiness out of it. We stop having to label things as, well, this wasn't, full channeling because I wasn't in a trance, or this doesn't really count as channeling because it was just an idea that popped in my head. Like, no, that is channeling. Did you receive new inspiration, new ideas from the divine, from spirit? Did you allow it to come into your being? And what are you going to do about it? And I think that's the question that I would love to bring forward in channeling is stop giving your power away to the thing that you're channeling. And what I mean by that is like, we think that like channeling just happens. Like we receive it, it comes out of our mouths, or we receive it and it just automatically tells us what to do. But it's this question of, no, you are entering into a co-creative moment with the divine is what channeling is. This is not a one-way street, right? Just like with Reiki, Reiki can be flowing through you all day long, but until you engage with that intention and actually use your hands and use your physical vessel to channel the Reiki through, that's only half the practice, right? And so with channeling, it's this idea of what are you going to do with the connection to the divine that you have? We all have it. We don't really have a choice, right? Like we don't come into the world disconnected from spirit or disconnected from the divine. And so whether you're pulling it in this third eye chakra, knowingness, word, thought form way, or you're pulling it in this sacral chakra, creativity, expression, manifestation way, doesn't matter. What matters is where is your connection to the divine? How is it coming through you? And what are you going to do about it? How are you going to let the divine move through you and allow that to be enough, no matter the path that it chooses?
Oh my God, I love this. Like I'm over here just like, yes, 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 yes. And part of it is that it's so spot on. I think we have the tendency in the spiritual community to put people on pedestals and to give our power away to those that have specific spiritual gifts and illuminate them in a very public way. When in reality, we all have the capacity to do this. We just have to remember, and I almost want to hyphenate that word, remember ourselves to understand that we are all divine and have this as an inherent link to our source, to our creator. And how do we link up in that way? The other reason why I'm giggling over here is because on Saturday, I went to chakra dance for the third eye. And if you don't know what chakra dance is, go in our past history. We did an interview with Jim McDonald on chakra dance over the summer of 2024. So there's more information on that. But basically, the third eye chakra dance is very much a trance dance. It's your coming into a flow with divine, moving your body and allowing the visuals, the language, whatever come through, right? And for me, in that trance dance, not only was my third eye very open and available, but so was my sacral chakra. And these conversations are not scripted. Like Isabel and I did not talk about these things before we got on. And yet here she is talking about sacral chakra and third eye. And I'm over here going, yeah, that's exactly what I'm working on. Like that's my experience right now of having both of these chakras open and available to connect and communicate and bring forward inspiration from divine. What does that look like? And so even though my third eye experience of this trance of getting the visuals and seeing my own spiritual involvement, let's put it that way, what I was seeing in my trance was a ginormous anaconda snake that was spiraled so that you would walk into a tunnel made out of its form. And the only prompt we got in this trance dance was to walk into the darkness and see what's there for you. And so I'm walking in a tunnel of anaconda, like that's what it felt like. And to really allow the squeeze of the snake to release any fear, to release what no longer serves me so that I can step fully in my power and have the snake energy, which is Kundalini rising. And what does Kundalini rising? Where does it start and where does it end? Kundalini rising energy starts in your sexual reproductive organs and your gonads, and it spirals up along the spine through the chakras and then pierces at the third eye, at the pineal gland. And so here we are again, sacral to third eye. This is your Kundalini rising energy. And when this energy flow is happening and when they're connected, your manifestation abilities are so powerful. You have this expressive sexual energy. You have this expressive third eye energy that's ready to receive from both earth source energy and divine source from above. And when you're in that full connection and that full flow, you can feel it throughout your entire body. All of your chakras are in flow and alignment as that Kundalini rising energy moves through you. And so, how do we elicit that energy flow? How are we moving our bodies to allow that flow to happen? Are we moving our hips every day? Are we spiraling energy to allow that Kundalini rising energy to happen? What information, what downloads, what visuals are you seeing to help you along your own spiritual path? And so I get really playful. I get really energized. I get really excited when I hear about this connection, because I find it to be one of the most powerful routes to our own self-healing practice and to allow ourselves to come into that divine flow, that vortex, if you will. That's how Abraham Hicks would call it, right? Like, are you in the vortex? If you're in the vortex, anything that comes to you is a divine inspiration, and that everything in your life will come into alignment to allow that to happen. And so, can we dream bigger? Right? Like, I think so often cultural says you can't have this, or you shouldn't want that, or whatever it may be. No, I can't have that full-time Reiki practice, or I could never be a guest on that podcast, or whatever it is for you. And what if it could happen? What if all of your dreams were put into you to keep you passionate and motivated to keep going on purpose? Like, I feel like so much of our society, our culture, is to make us small. And what if we said, that's BS. I'm going to be exactly who I am and show up in my divine light and allow spirit to come through. And so let me put it this way. I'm always happily surprised by when I put myself in a position to teach and I don't know who my audience is going to be. Like, I love doing these workshops because when I come to an in-person practice, I know divine has put that person in my path for reason and purpose, period. I don't know what is supposed to come out of my mouth for them. I don't know what exercise is going to align with them. I don't know what or why they are there, but I know they are there for divine reason and purpose. And it's completely chosen that way. Like, I feel very much like every single person that is put in my presence in an in-person workshop or even an online webinar, you are meant to hear this message for reason and purpose. Why are you on listening to this today? It's because there's something here for you. You are called to come listen to this, to hit the play button, to show up, to be available. And why? There is a divine nudge, divine push that's coming through to say, listen, hear, know that this is opening and awakening to your own possibilities. And what is that for you if there wasn't something getting in your way? Right. And so, as we have this conversation, I hope it is inspiring. I hope it is making you excited. I hope it is encouraging you to come into your own alignment and getting those curiosity feelings and mojo going, what do I want? What do I want to create in this life? What legacy do I want to leave? How do I want to touch people? And it can be as simple as being kind. It doesn't have to be big, but when we're in alignment, we are more likely to smile at the person that we're walking past on the street. We're more likely to open the door for the person that's struggling carrying a load of groceries or whatever it is. We can be the kindest, most genuine versions of ourselves when we're in this space as well. We're better humans. And the heaviness of the world can be shrugged off so that we can be in our full brightness. And I feel like there is always, I don't care if it was a month ago or 2 years ago or whenever, the world, the earth is always heavy because it's projected onto us that way, right? The media will always project fear. It is meant to do that. That's the algorithm of media. And so when we can say, I'm turning it off, I am going to do my practice, I'm going to be kind to whoever I come into contact with. What does your world look like then? And I find it really beautiful because I have people in my life that live from this space of just, they're going to be kind to the fullest capacity that they're available for and watch karma celebrate them. They always have good things coming back to them. The more you put out this positivity, I believe it comes back tenfold. So you just finding your own personal practice, your own way of channeling, of honoring your spiritual gifts, of doing the work, allowing yourself to be in that flow, and then sharing it when we can share ourselves. And I think even for myself, there's times of like, if I share myself, if I share my true gifts, I'm going to be judged. This is bringing up my witch's wound. I'm going to die, like whatever it may be, and going, but is that true? Is it actually true? No. And the more I practice this, the more I show up in my authentic self and my authentic voice of who I am, of being kind, of caring, I will always get back tenfold that positivity. And I hear it all the time with our students, with our audience, of going, what you said helped me that day, or what the practice that you exemplified, I tried it and it helped me in such a big way. This is going to be the thing that I'm going to do on a regular basis because I feel so good when I do it. It's those kind of things when I share, it comes back to me, and I love doing what I do. I love how we do what we do. I love the container that we've built that has come through in a very divine inspired way. We didn't become Moon Rising just because I felt like it was time to change our colors or something. It really came through in a big, major download, a channeled experience of, if you want to support the world in a more aligned way, in a higher divine path, then you need to be Moon Rising. And that was why we shifted. And I know and trust that all of the energy and effort and money that we've put into the rebrand is going to come back tenfold. Like, I believe it because the visuals and the voice and the authenticity in which we can show up through Moon Rising is going to come back. And having that knowingness, having that trust, having that passion for what we do and how we do it is going to resonate with the people who are ready for it.
And this is where when it comes to channeling, I get so passionate about it, because not only do we get to be here at Moon Rising this example of what it can mean to channel, because Christine's absolutely right. Moon Rising itself was this completely channeled project, from the idea to the name to the logo to the colors to the website. All of it just came through us. But what I love about this is it really reminds us that when we are in that state of alignment, when our wires are connected, when your third eye and your sacral chakra are flowing, however you want to describe it, but when you are in alignment, when you are in that flow, you are connected from yourself, your true self, to the divine. That is the connection. That is the path. Whereas when we're out of alignment, that's when we start to move from being connected to the divine, connected to spirit, to being connected to the next strongest energy source. And the next strongest energy source right now is mass consciousness, and the media, and the fear, and the heaviness, and the hardship, and all of these really heavy emotions. And so when we're out of alignment, that's why it's so much easier for us to get caught up in all of these really heavy things that are happening. And that doesn't mean that when we're connected, we're ignoring them, but it means that when we're connected, we are divinely inspired for how to act in the face of those things. But this is where we have to be aware of that fact of, when we are out of alignment, that's when we start to lean a little too heavily on our mind or our ego. That's when we start to lean a little too heavily onto mass consciousness, onto this other energy source, because it's the next biggest energy source to the divine. And so when you see yourself out of alignment and you go through that process of, what's going to bring you back into the flow? What's going to reconnect you? What does that look like for you? Because it looks different for every person. The way that Christine gets into alignment is very different than the way that I get into alignment. And that doesn't mean that either of us are better or worse than. It just means that we have found our flow, because when you are in that flow, when you are connected, You have no choice but to receive divine inspiration. You have no choice but to receive healing, to receive support, to get divine downloads, because the only connection that's happening is from you to the divine, from you to the divine. And in that place, this is where we see, whether it's Abraham Hicks talking about the vortex, where everything that you want, every thought that comes in when you're in the vortex is straight from spirit, or we're just talking about people who are really good manifestors, where they think something and then it's in their lives the next day. And we look at it like it's magic, right? Like they could have anything they put their mind to, but that's not what's happening. What's happening is they are in a state of alignment to where they are able to receive the understanding of what their soul came to earth to do. And this next thing, this next project, this next life experience, this next partner, this next person, this next whatever is what they need to continue on that path. And so they are, because they are connected, they're able to receive that inspiration from the divine of, wouldn't it be cool if I had this? And because they're in that flow, they're in that vortex, it comes into their lives, not because they randomly decided, oh, I need a puppy, and the next day a puppy showed up, but it's because they're in alignment, they're in flow. And so what they're manifesting was already meant for them. And that's why it seems like magic, because we are connected to the divine. We are in alignment with what is meant for us. And when we're in that state, we have no choice but to be walking that path. And this is why it's so important. And, maybe the takeaway from today's conversation is really to look at, get your journal out and sit down and really take a moment to just answer a couple of journal prompts of first looking at what gets you back into alignment. Very first, what does alignment mean to you? What does it feel like to you when you are in the flow, when you're connected, when you're aligned? And what gets you there? Is it coloring? Is it writing? Is it going for a walk? Is it playing with your kids? Is it listening to music? Is it doing work? What is it for you that gets you back into alignment? And when you are in alignment, do you feel worthy to receive from the divine? Because we can be as aligned as we want to, but unless we feel worthy to then receive the fruits of that connection, nothing's going to come through, because we're going to be stamping it down. We're going to be closing off one end of that straw so that everything just starts building up, because we feel like we're not worthy to receive what's coming, to receive what's meant for us. So that's another big prompt and another big topic that we've done podcasts on, and we cover it in our Soul Rising class because it's huge. We live in a self-worth epidemic where people believe they aren't worthy because that's what we're taught. And it's time, again, to step out of that box. It's time to let that one go, because that is our birthright, to be connected to the divine, because we are divine beings. We have a piece of the divine in us. We are inherently worthy to receive. But the question isn't, are we worthy? The question is, do you believe that you're worthy? Because that basic fact of whether you're worthy or not, that doesn't change, but your opinion does. And your opinion can make all the difference. And so looking at, do you believe in that aligned state that you are worthy to receive? And then finally looking at, when you are aligned, when you feel worthy, even if you have to imagine this, right? Let's pretend that you're aligned, that you're worthy. How does the divine come through for you? What are instances in your life where words have popped into your head, or you've received an idea for a project and it's just come together magically, or you've had a vision while you were sleeping or meditating or whatever? When was a time where the divine came through you? I guarantee you have at least one. If you look at it in the context of this conversation of everything that channeling can and does mean, take the idea of trance channeling out of your head, whatever the stereotypical idea that you have of what it means to channel, put that away, set that aside. Think about channeling as when you connect to the divine, receive inspiration and energy, and it comes through you into the world. When has the divine worked through you in that way, and what did it look like? And how can you then be more open to more opportunities like that? So if the divine comes to you when you're writing, when was the last time you pulled out a journal? If the divine comes to you through songs, when was the last time you let yourself hum while you were baking? If the divine comes to you through teaching, when was the last time you put together a class and trusted that the students were going to show up? Channeling can happen all the time, but only if we're putting ourselves in the situations that are going to allow us to have that flow. For me, 90% of my channeling comes through in words. And so I have a podcast and I teach and I do these things that are word heavy because I know that that is the primary way that the divine and the energies that I channel come through me. But if I wasn't doing this, I wouldn't have as many opportunities. And I might feel like I couldn't channel because I wasn't allowing myself to use the medium that the divine wants me to use. And so, looking at, again, these 3 prompts, what does alignment and flow look like to you? And how can you get into it? In that state, do you believe that you are worthy to receive? And if not, can you get yourself there? If you need help, let us know. And finally, how does the divine speak through you? And how can you put yourself in more of those situations to be able to receive that and celebrate it each and every time that it comes through you, even if you think it's small, even if you think it doesn't really count as channeling? Can you celebrate the times where you interact with the divine simply by noticing the miracle of the fact that you just connected with the divine? Right? We've had this whole conversation, like taking it almost for granted, right? Being a little flippant about channeling. But the fact of it is an opportunity to connect with the divine, and we all have it. And isn't that a miracle? And wouldn't it be such a waste of our own time and potential if we didn't at least try? And so that's my invitation to you from this podcast is, can you do these journal prompts? Can you let yourself be open? And can you at least try? Because we firmly believe that everybody has the ability to channel if you allow it to come through you the way that it's meant to come through you, not the way that you think it should, but the way that it does. So can you let yourself be open and see what happens?
I love that. And I feel like don't be surprised if it wants to come through in multiple different avenues, right? Like one day it might come easy through one way, and then the next it's another way. And that your job is to find your flow. Your job is to continue to maintain that level of expansion. And how do we release the fear? And how do we release the limiting beliefs? And how do we come to a state of, I know that I am worthy for all of the gifts that show up in my life the way they desire to. And know that we aren't meant to be in struggle all of the time. Like, yes, there's lessons to learn. There's things that we need to move through and process. And what if there was this avenue of saying yes to yourself, saying yes to the divine, saying, yes, I'm worthy of this, and letting your life unfold through that filter that the divine is ready and available for you at all times. And I think we so often forget that we have a spirit team, that we have helpers, that we have support that goes beyond this physical reality to say yes to you. And what does that look like? And the way it can show up can be a trickle or it can be a flood, and whatever shows up is okay. Like, I remember the first time I started speaking in light language, it was like 10 plus years ago. And I had no idea what it was or what I was doing. I was just doing Reiki and the language was spilling out of my mouth. And I was like, okay, cool, but I have no idea what it was. And then it's been coming more and more and more. And the reasoning behind it is because the actual sounds, the vibrational sounds that were coming through had healing properties, right? And so what is it for you? How can you say yes to you? And what does that look like for you? We are each individually unique. I have students that will come to me after they have completed their advanced training and be like, but what does it look like for you, Christine? I'm like, what it looks like for me is never going to look like for you. And that's okay. And we still have people who want to put you on a pedestal and going, you have all these spiritual gifts. I'm like, you know what? My spiritual gifts are in black and white. My spiritual gifts show up only when I do these activities. Like, it shows up the way it shows up for me because I'm me. Your spiritual gifts will show up for you because you are you. You have a different divine reason and purpose for being on this earth than me. And so whatever it is okay and blessed and just right. And so how can you say every day yes to your gifts, to yes to how spirit shows up in your life? And how can you say yes, please, and thank you? I think that we have to say, yes, I'm ready for miracles to show up. Yes, I need support. Yes, I want the help. Yes, I want to be in alignment with divine. Yes, I want to be in flow. Yes, I want to be an instrument of divine in service so that the world can be a better place, not only for myself, but for those in my life and my community. And how can I show up today in service of the divine? What does that look like? And when we know that we're in service and we ask, yes, I need monetary compensation to come along with this so I can continue to do it, that's not a bad thing. Like, it's okay to charge for your services. And it all comes back to self-worth. And it all comes back to knowing that you are divine. And I keep saying that over and over and over again because I'm hoping that will hit your subconscious, that you will remember that you are a divine individual being on this planet with reason and purpose for you. Because if we can remember that, we can step fully into our power and co-create with divine in such a magical, joyful way. And isn't that what we want in our life? Magical, joyful experiences that help us feel so incredibly expansive. So if that is speaking light language, if that is doing your art, if that is creating containers to play or to process or whatever it is in your world, what is your passion? Listen to it and follow it because there's a reason why it's there in your life.
Absolutely. And so that is our invitation to you today. And we would love to hear what your top takeaway is, whether that's how you followed your passion and purpose today, or an aha moment that you had because of this conversation, or the answers to some of those journal prompts. We would love to hear over in our Moon Rising Shamanic Facebook group. This is a community of thousands of people that we have who are having conversations just like this one. And so if you're listening to this and you're ready to dive in deeper and you want to connect with like-minded souls and you want to have this really sacred community where these kinds of conversations are the norm, make sure to join us over in the Moon Rising Shamanic Institute Facebook group. You can find it by searching Moon Rising Shamanic Mystics, and you can join our Facebook group. Let us know what your top takeaways were. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast if you haven't already so that you get access to new episodes sooner. And as always, thank you for listening. Thank you for taking the time to listen to that intuitive nudge, to know that there was something here for you, some meaning that you were meant to receive. We would love to know what that is. And until next time, may you awaken to the whispers of wisdom rising from within.